Welcome back, everyone. As you probably guessed from the title and the thumbnail, today we are talking about the second Trump assassination attempt, some things that we have learned since our last video. So we did our first video on this. It was recorded less than 4 hours after the incident actually happened. So there was a lot of gaps in the story at that time, and there's still a lot of gaps in the story, just to be honest with you. However, we know a ton more than we did in that video that we filmed on Sunday. So this video is being filmed on the 17th at 7:20 Eastern Standard Time. Probably be released tomorrow if I had to guess. I don't think a ton will change between them, but you never know. So stay tuned to all my social media for that. So the big thing we know is the person who is accused of doing this, his name is Ryan Routh, I do believe is how it's pronounced. He is originally from the Greensboro, North Carolina area. That's where he spent the majority of his life. Recently, apparently lived in Hawaii for a good bit of time. However, as recently as a few months ago, he voted in the North Carolina primaries, the Democrat primaries. So he seems to be at least having been gone back and forth, and we'll get into more of his travels here in just a little bit. 58-year-old with an extensive criminal history. I've seen several reports stating that has faced, I guess, over the course of his life, over 100 counts of criminal activity. I posted a few pages of his criminal activity that was public anyway at the time over on my Twitter page. It is long, and there's some interesting periods of time in his life where it seems like things were kind of going wrong all at once. I'm not sure if that's indicative of some sort of mental health, like bipolar or something like that, where he was having episodes. I have no idea, but definitely had some issues in 2002, then again in 2010, and a few times in between them, but there was like chunks of a lot of different arrests happening at the same time. Interestingly, something that a lot of people have pointed out, which I think is worthy of consideration, is that he never was actually sentenced to prison. He was held in jail a couple times during the few days after his arrest, but he never served a prison sentence, which is interesting because he's a multiple-time felon. That is quite rare. Why that is, we don't know. It's led a lot of folks to believe that there's some sort of connection to other organizations. I can't say that, but I also can't say that that's not true either. It's just worth considering. There's a few other things that sort of stand out if you're looking at his profile overall. So like I mentioned, again, from the Greensboro area, from everything we've read, he has been a roofing contractor essentially for his entire adult life. At certain points during that time, he actually owned his own company. He's owned at least 3 companies from what we've been able to find online anyway. And I believe in 2018, he moved out to Hawaii. And where he moved to Hawaii is actually a really nice place. I'm quite familiar with it. And the house he was living in has a Zillow estimate right now of just under $1 million in terms of valuation. So how he was able to afford that, again, we really don't know at this point, but he certainly was living there for at least a few years, at least 3 to 4 years that we can sort of pinpoint on his timeline. So again, how he afforded to do that, we don't know. As of Monday, when he went before a judge for his arraignment, he's told the judge that he makes approximately he makes approximately $3,000 a month in terms of his income as a construction business owner, which he currently owns in Hawaii, where he builds small shacks for homeless people. So I'm not sure how profitable that could actually be. If you think about trying to sell small shacks to homeless people, it doesn't seem like a profitable endeavor, but it may be, who knows. Other interesting facts about him is that he recently spent several months, up to a year, in Ukraine, and his Twitter archives, as well as his Facebook, as well as his Snapchat, which have all been archived, show some interesting things going on in Ukraine. So apparently he voted for Donald Trump in 2016. That's according to his voting records. Also, according to his own self-published book, which is on Amazon. You can get it right now for $1.99 if you're interested. It's 291 pages long. And so he voted for Donald Trump, then was apparently very disappointed by what happened after President Trump got into office. And once the Ukraine war kicked off, he really went into full blue and yellow mode. He quite literally dyed his hair blue and yellow multiple times. He spent at least 4 months in Ukraine. However, multiple reports seem to indicate that it was up to 2 years. His book says at least 4 months though. So again, we're not really sure on all the moving pieces. He appeared in several different advertisements for different organizations in Ukraine. One of the more prominent ones that has been shared online was for the Azov Battalion. However, the Azov Battalion, they have a PR team, which is interesting in and of itself. As soon as this happened, they absolutely distanced themselves from him. And what he was doing in Ukraine seems to vary depending on when he was posting and where he was posting, but a couple things we know he was trying to do is he was trying to move Afghan former soldiers of the Afghan National Army, not the Taliban, Afghan National Army, through Pakistan, through Iran, into Ukraine to fight in the war.
Problem? Officials in Kiev simply aren't interested in recruiting them.
Ukraine is reluctant to be cooperative.
That's Ryan Routh, a U.S. citizen who set up the International Volunteer Center in Ukraine to help connect foreigners to Ukrainian military units.
Now I'm talking to over 100 soldiers every day, and pretty much everybody, all of my contacts in Ukraine, they were adamant and pretty much yelled at me every time that I suggested that we bring in Afghans.
The Ukrainian government didn't respond to our request for comment, but a source close to the officials in Kiev told Semaphore that their top concern is the question of loyalty in the thick fog of war.
The biggest thing is spies. They're afraid that anybody and everybody is a Russian spy.
Those concerns aren't completely unfounded. Russia's notorious private military group, Wagner, has reportedly begun recruiting Afghan commandos. Semaphore reviewed these text messages from Afghan soldiers, which tell the same story.
What I heard was that they were offering them about $2,500 to $3,500 a month to come there, and they were going to put them up with housing and stuff like that. I don't know any personally that took that option. None of my guys did. But there were a lot that did take that option.
He posted multiple times, both videos and text posts on Twitter and Facebook, that he was being frustrated because the Russians were very concerned that some of these folks could be spies, and that was, in his mind anyway, prohibiting him from moving them there. There was one ad that he put up for foreign volunteers to join the Legion, and he was offering, I don't know who was backing this, I can't say that, but his advertisement that he put up said that he was offering to pay $1,200 a month. And then at another point later on in the war, an advertisement that he put up, apparently, was offering to pay up to $3,000 a month. So those are not insignificant facts. I don't know if he was tied in with the Ukraine government, some other government. I have no idea, but those are the things we know about him. And I would just say that the average person doesn't have things like this about them if you look into them online, if that makes sense. So this person was a very unique individual, and certainly someone who didn't fit the typical mold of, your average American dad, which he did have kids, and he was engaged to a woman that he lived in Hawaii with, who was apparently the editor of his self-published book. One thing he stated in an interview with the New York Times is, once again, he was trying to move those Afghan soldiers through Pakistan and Iran. He stated, which is interesting, we'll circle back to this here in just a second, that he believed he could purchase Pakistani passports for travel because those are required if you want to serve in the Foreign Legion in Ukraine. And the reason he said that he believed he could do that is because Pakistan was so corrupt. And then in his book, which again, there should be a photo or something up here on your screen so you guys can see it, he wrote in there that it was, and this was addressed to the Iranian leadership, that it was okay to take him out, meaning President Trump. So he wrote that in his own book. And then one thing I also want to mention is that his whereabouts essentially since 2018 have been, I've seen multiple reports of a lot of different things. One thing we know for sure is that he was in Hawaii, he was in Ukraine multiple times, he was in North Carolina multiple times, and then he was in Florida, here down in Palm Beach County. So at least 5 different places. These trips are not, necessarily expensive, but they're not necessarily inexpensive either. Again, we know he spent at least 4 months in Ukraine. I don't know how he was funding that, if he was making approximately $3,000 a month, subtract taxes and everything else that goes into that. There's not a lot left over there for travel expenses and, humanitarian aid work, which he believed he was doing. So again, not sure where the funding went into. There had to be some sort of logistical support for him in order to do these sorts of things. Additionally, one thing that I've covered in previous videos that really hasn't been unearthed, if you will, yet fully, is that the day before the J-13 assassination, so the previous assassination, the FBI reported that they had arrested a man from Pakistan who had ties to Iran, who had come to America and was offering to pay people to kill President Trump and other prominent politicians. As we just talked about there, he wrote in his book that it was it was okay to take him out to the Iranian government. And then he mentioned multiple times moving these people through Pakistan and Iran. I'm not tying those together. I'm just saying they cannot be untied, at least at this point. It's something that is at least worthy of consideration, at least in my opinion anyway, because there's, like, for example, if you looked into my background, you're not going to see Pakistani ties. You're not going to see me telling the Iranian government to take out American politicians. Like, this is unusual behavior, and especially given the circumstances where he was found apparently attempting to shoot President Trump, it makes it even more unusual. So there is that. Additionally, moving on to the actual firing position and everything that was going on there, yesterday, so Monday, the day after the alleged shooting happened, the New York Post wrote an article which is very, very interesting, and what they were stating was that essentially what they believe this man did was look at their photos they had of President Trump on various golf courses, where they were able to get photos essentially by sneaking out to the property line of the golf courses, taking photos with telephoto lenses, and that it was a gap that could easily be exploited in the security of Secret Service protectees. And if you look at what he did, from what we know now, at least what's been reported, is that essentially President Trump was on the 5th hole at the time that the Secret Service agent discovered his final hide or final firing position, depending on how you want to use terminology on that one. And President Trump was on the 5th hole, and mind you, this entire golf course is surrounded by a chain link fence, as well as really high shrubs and then some palm trees behind it. So it's sort of like triple layer in terms of the actual surrounding area from the golf course, walling it off from the rest of the city. Additionally, Congress Ave is on the east side of the golf course, and that is a very highly trafficked road. I've been on that road personally. It's a very popular road. There's a lot of cars going on there, so it would be very easy to sort of get lost in that congestion, if you will. However, from what the reports we've been told by both the FBI and the Secret Service, is that the firing position Ryan here chose to take up was on the south side of the course by the 6th green. So essentially, if President Trump was on, I should be rolling in maps here, if President Trump was on the 5th hole at that time, then there wouldn't have been a line of sight to where President Trump was, and it would have been roughly 300 to 400 yards away at that point. And there was a Secret Service agent that was doing an advanced security sweep of the area who discovered the muzzle sticking through the fence of an SKS rifle, which we'll get to here in just a second. So it appears that, at least on some level, the Secret Service did their job and actually found the person who was attempting to kill President Trump. However, from what I've read and seen from several Secret Service agents talking in media over the last couple of days, they say that outer perimeter absolutely should have been swept, even if this was a non-planned visit. That would be something that they would typically do per their standard operating procedure. And for whatever reason, the Secret Service agent today came out and said that they did not sweep the outer perimeter. So there is a failure there in their security plan yet again. But talking about the final firing position, I had just gotten photos as I was filming my video last time, but they weren't confirmed or anything like that. But as of right now, they've been posted by the FBI and several other alphabet agencies. So I do believe that they are true at this point. So what he appears to have had is a SKS rifle. He's been charged with it having no serial number or being scratched off. As we just mentioned, I don't think the geese like SKSs, but as we just mentioned, the man had multiple felony convictions and was a prohibited person in terms of buying firearms. So that shows you how well firearms laws, common sense gun laws work. When there is a will, there is a way. And this man was able to procure an SKS rifle, which is chambered at 7.62 by 3.9. It has roughly a 20-inch barrel. And I actually did a video in 2020 on that over on my B channel, because back then they were really popular during the COOF days as like survival rifles. And during that video, we shot a group with steel cased ammo and got roughly a 4 MOA or a 4-inch group at 100 yards. And I'm gonna roll in a photo here because I know during these videos, we have a lot of people who are new to the channel and aren't subscribers. So what that means in terms of efficacy of that rifle for this type of mission, if you will, is that that was me shooting with iron sights, if you guys go watch that video. But he had a scope on his rifle. However, scope mounts are notoriously difficult to get zeroed on SKS rifles because they mount on the top cover of the receiver, which is not designed for mounting optics, if that makes sense. But let's say he was a good shooter and could shoot those 4 MOA groups, maybe even a little bit tighter with a scope, let's say, hypothetically, out at 500 yards, which is where President Trump initially was estimated to be. That's roughly a 20-inch circle, as you guys can see from the cone of fire that we're rolling in here. So it is a rifle that, in theory, you know, not counting for wind, assuming he understood bullet drop at distance, things like that, which I kind of doubt at this point, honestly. Assuming he knew all that, was a rifle that was capable of it. However, it was definitely not optimal for it. No doubt about that. My guess is his plan, because let me back up here. Now we have cell phone data that has been released that say that he was at that position from 2 a.m. in the morning until roughly after 1 p.m. So over 12 hours he was in, excuse me, up to 12 hours he was in that position. Essentially waiting for President Trump to come down the 6th hole. Now, if you look at the layout, it's really hard to say what exact line of sight he had. However, basically after teeing off on the 6th hole, he would have been capable, from what I see anyway, just looking at the topography there, of engaging someone on the 6th hole. So again, from what we've heard, President Trump said that he had to putt still on the 5th hole, so he didn't quite make it to the green on the 5th hole. So never was in line of sight from, again, everything we know at this point. But if I was, you know, thinking as a crazy person in this scenario, he was probably waiting, especially given that he chose that southern position rather than the eastern position. He was probably waiting until someone was on the 6th green, and that's when he planned on ambushing them. The SKS certainly in that at that distance would be capable of inflicting enormous damage to anybody who would be in that vicinity, because that's roughly 75 to 150 feet. And that apparently is also where the Secret Service agent recognized what was going on and opened fire on them. So speaking of that, we should be rolling in photos here of where his observational post or final firing position, whatever you want to call it, was. And essentially what we've been told is that he had these 2 packs, and those were either full of ceramic tiles, which can break up bullet fragments, or ceramic body armor. Could be either. It's been reported as both. I have no idea. Additionally, he had a GoPro camera set up. We don't know at this point if the GoPro was pointed forward or if it was pointed at him. That would be interesting to know. Just it would show mindset types of things. But apparently he took that barrel of his SKS and was actually poking it through the fence, and that's what caused the Secret Service agent to see it. Interestingly, apparently, according to one of the sheriffs, county sheriffs there, 2 counties are involved at least at this point. One of them gave a brief this morning stating that when he was arrested, he was wearing like a salmon shirt or a pink shirt, whatever you want to call it, that apparently he was wearing that in that position as well. Secret Service agent stated that they saw a rifle, the muzzle end, and fired at the muzzle. So that doesn't indicate that they actually saw a person to me. Whether or not they just said it in a weird way, I don't know. I can't say at this point, but it is interesting to note. So I don't know if he had additional camouflage or if that position was just so dark in the shadows that the agent couldn't see it, but somehow could see the glint of a muzzle. Again, we don't know. But at that point, apparently he dropped the rifle without firing a shot and exfilled from that position, or left that position, got into a vehicle. The initial reports were that Secret Service agents identified the vehicle with a drone, and that's how they were able to catch him down the road as he headed north into Martin County. However, the current reports that we've seen, and it has been pretty consistent, is that it was actually a female civilian who saw the commotion happening, heard the gunshots, saw a man running, get into a black SUV, and she took photos of the actual license plate, sent that to law enforcement, and then he got on I-95. I-95, if you guys don't know, has a bunch of cameras that tracks license plates, and most major highways have this at this point. So they were able to get his location as he was driving down the road, and the sheriff's deputies pulled him over and arrested him without issue. So one thing that I wanted to point out there that would be weird about that from somebody who's conducted Overwatch types of missions is that, again, he had a scope on his rifle, allegedly. And so if he was sticking his muzzle through the fence line, number one, that's something that in almost any scenario a trained person would never do. There's like weird scenarios where you do it, but this isn't one of them. So typically what you do as a trained person is either set up a position either high above the fence, so that way you didn't have to worry about the fence obscuring your actual shot, or you just cut out a portion of it and stay back. Either way, you're going to stay back. And stay back so that way you have an unobstructed firing lane to whatever your target is. So the fact that he was sticking his rifle through tends to tell me that his level of training is probably pretty low. It also tends to tell me, given the topography there where we had the green from his position, and then off to the right is where the 6th hole would be, is that he was probably using his scope the magnified scope on the rifle to actually look around and see what was out there. So he's probably using it in lieu of binoculars or some sort of monocular magnified optic to be able to scout the area around him. I have not seen any reports that there was binoculars or monocular found, so very likely that is what he was doing, especially given that he was out there for 12 hours and had snacks and water at that position. That's probably what he was using to see what was going on in the area, and if he probably saw people coming down, i.e. the Secret Service agents in this case, he's probably looking to see who it was, if it was President Trump, etc. It shows that he very likely was a non-sophisticated, a relatively low-trained, or just an unsophisticated person when it comes to operating or planning out or conducting this type of mission, which is good. In both cases of President Trump's assassination attempts, we haven't had a sophisticated attack. It's just been a series of failures, especially at the outer layers of perimeter security, that have allowed these people to get within rifle range of President Trump. It's very disturbing that it has happened twice now, particularly the second time after an elevated security posture has been supposedly put in under President Trump. By all reports, Secret Service had drones up in the area. I don't know if they had thermal drones up. People have postulated online that the thermals wouldn't have worked because it was roughly 85 degrees out that day. However, one thing I will tell you, if he's sitting in a wood line, if that Secret Service agents who were doing an advanced, sweep of the area, if they had thermal monoculars to just kind of scan the tree line, there is no doubt in my mind that a human body that's 98 degrees, I've used thermal a ton. We have lots of reviews here on the channel. You guys can check them out. A human body in the shade on an 85-degree day would glow like crazy. So I don't know why they don't have them. If they had them and they weren't using them, I don't know. But that is definitely something I would do to walk the perimeter of anything, especially when it is not wide open. If I was a Secret Service agent or somebody in charge of President Trump, I don't know if he's going to hire private security at this point, because who the heck knows what's going on over there at the Secret Service. But definitely thermals would have helped. Again, I just wanted to address that because I've heard multiple people say they might not have, given the atmospherics. Yeah, if he was laying wide out in the open, maybe not. In this case, they absolutely 100% would have worked from the agents on the ground, no doubt in my mind. And with that out of the way, just one other closing point that I wanted to make before we end the video, because I realize we're probably getting relatively long here. Before we get to that, definitely want to thank the main channel sponsor, and that is Brownells. If you guys like thermal optics, accessories for your SKS, ammo, gunsmithing supplies, all of those things can be found over at Brownells. So big thank you to them for being the main channel sponsor. Getting to that last point, like I just said, he seemed to be an unsophisticated actor. I mentioned earlier that there have been threats from Iran and other state actors. Obviously, President Trump ordered the death of General Soleimani, who is like a cult hero in Iran, at least to about half the population anyway. And they're still pretty bitter about that. So there's a lot of people out there. And then, of course, Iran has proxies of lots of other groups as well. What would have happened, number one, if there was a sophisticated effort to do this? What if they had FPV drones, had more than one person, right? So at this point, the Secret Service has shown that they don't really do a good job at finding people with rifles within, 500 yards of the president. It seems to be something they're not all that good at. And what if they had, in this case, right, you had your northern road, your eastern road, which again is Congress, but again, all of that, where the course is, where that fence is obscured. So somebody could pretty easily hide in there, particularly if they weren't wearing a salmon colored shirt. And then that southern end as well. So anywhere in there, if you had 3 different people, with all interlocking sectors of fire, would that have been stopped? Honestly, I'm not super confident at this point, and I don't feel like I'm putting anything out there that is sophisticated. All these things can be found in basic Army field manuals. So obviously, I hope that nothing happens to anyone in the political arena leading up to the election, and of course after as well. But what would have happened, number one, if it was a sophisticated organization or unit? What would have happened, conversely, if this was a Democrat president, right? So the Butler Farms incident, we still don't know the truth about it right now. It's been over 2 months. We don't know the truth about it. The media doesn't seem to be asking about it. It has largely been memory hold. YouTube is trying to minimize the reach of videos about it. I don't know if that'll happen with this shooting or not, but there is an organized effort to not talk about what happened in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure that would be the case if it was President Biden or Ms. Harris. The same would be true here. I don't think if this happened a second time, especially to a Democrat nominee, I think the response and the national narrative would be completely different than what it is right now. Looking at how several news outlets reported this on Sunday evening, and then on Monday morning, some of them reported it as shots were exchanged, and not even that someone was trying to kill President Trump. One organization initially reported it as gang violence. Shots were exchanged near the president. So there seems to be an active campaign in the quote-unquote mainstream media to cover this up and minimize the threat that there is to President Trump and other folks in the political realm, because the Secret Service secures all of them. So I think things would be quite different if that was the case. And again, I don't want that to be the case. I think it would be, and it's worth considering both of those. What if it was a Democrat, and then what if it was a sophisticated party? I'm not sure they would be able to stop an FPV drone right now. I'm certainly not confident in it. I'm certainly not confident that trained snipers who could actually engage at further distances could be stopped. So hopefully this is a wake-up call for the Secret Service and the President Trump's inner security team as well. I don't know if he has a separate one, but I probably would if I was him at this point, given the Secret Service's record. So we're going to end the video there, guys. Of course, if you guys are new here, and I imagine a lot of you guys are watching this video, definitely hit the subscribe button. Unfortunately, I think this is going to be a series again, and I think more and more is going to come out, so definitely hit the subscribe button for that. If you guys are subscribed and you're not seeing 2 to 4 videos a week here on the channel, make sure you sign up for my email at the website here on your screen. This email goes out once a month, and it has all the videos since the previous month's email went out, so that way there's no big tech giant censoring your eyes from my content through an algorithm. Additionally, typically we review guns and gear and other stuff like that here on the channel, so if you guys are interested in deals on that, we have our daily deals email. That email goes out every day, as the name indicates, and it has 8 of the best deals that we find around the internet on guns, ammunition, optics, thermals, all types of stuff. And if it's in that email on the given day, it's the cheapest I know of anywhere on the internet, because I've already done the price comparisons for you. So that way, hopefully, it saves you some time and some money. And lastly, we have a text message service. So if you guys are interested in getting either the best deal of the day or breaking news stories through video, we will send those out via text message right to your inbox. It's at most 1 text a day, and you guys can sign up for that at the website here on your screen. And with that, that's all I have for you. Thank you all for watching. I truly appreciate it. I look forward to seeing everybody in the next video.